Everybody.
I've already said hello to them. Would you like to say hello?
Hi. How are you doing?
So I'm back, and I am so excited to having this conversation with you. We have met before, haven't we?
We have. I'm a big fan of yours.
Oh, well, thank you. And I thought we would start, I've given a lot of thought to this conversation. I thought we would start with what happened when you took the role. And there was a lot of controversy. There was a lot of media heat. Did you feel trusted to become the CEO? You personally, did you feel trusted?
Well, I'll tell you, it was a strange thing because a lot of people trusted me. So clearly the board who hired me trusted me, and the organization did. And generally, a lot of the Norwegians did. I got, thousands and thousands of kind of supporting mails and texts and so on during the whole period. And they were all really, really positive. From, high up in the north, from fishermen people to industrial workers to, I was invited to the Christmas party at the car mechanics shop, Actually here, I think, in this town, I think. So I had a lot of support from the people, but media didn't quite trust me in the beginning.
And where do you think that was coming from, the media's distrust?
I think you distrust something you don't know, so you trust the unknown. And of course, you don't really trust people who made a lot of money. I mean, they are not trustworthy. People think. And you can see why. I mean, you see when people do make money, their behavior will change, many times. They generally drive worse in the traffic. They just do a lot of things which are not so good.
I'm a terrible driver, and I didn't make a lot of money, so I don't know how that explains my behavior. But anyway,
I think the reason why they didn't want to trust you with a car is because you drive on the wrong side of the street.
That is true. That is true. But reading the media that happened at the time, what struck me about it was that, in many ways, people were questioning your integrity, your intentions for taking the role, and I mean this as a compliment, the way that you've navigated that and really communicated why you wanted this role. You gave up a lot to take this role. Why did you want it so much?
Yeah, well, I don't feel that I gave up anything because I think I've got the coolest job in the world, working with some fantastic people. So I don't really feel I gave anything away. It's just been really, really interesting, huge learning experience. And I'm so happy I did it. Now, why did I want to do it? Well, one, I spent my whole life doing asset management and managing money, and I think that's really, really interesting. At the same time, I had been studying organizational psychology and development, and this job was, just in the middle of managing money and developing an organization for the best of, the Norwegian people and everybody who is here in the room. So, to me, it was just like the dream job.
So, let's switch gears a bit and talk about, I know that you are a passionate learner, a lifelong learner, and that you've done 2 masters, one in social psychology and history of art, and that you share a passion of mine, which is learning from mistakes. And I used to hate being wrong until I realized that every time I was wrong, I'd learned something. But I was thinking about this, when I'm wrong about an idea or a theory. When you're wrong, now, you have billions of dollars of money at stake.
Yeah.
So I'm interested how you've personally got confident with humility and admitting your mistakes.
Yeah. Well, when you do asset management, it is a very humiliating job because you are wrong nearly 50% of the time. Now,
50%?
Nearly 50. So what we try to do, we try to beat the market. Now, if you are as good as the market, you are right 50% of the time. If you are right 51% of the time, you are very good. And if you are 52% of the time, you are a hero. So you just have to get used to getting wrong, 48% of the situations. And you have to learn from them. So I just think there is something really humiliating with operating in capital markets. Because if you don't, you just become arrogant and there is a lot of hubris and you will fail as an investor.
So how, failing 48% of the time,
Yeah.
with that, not just money, but people's lives, that responsibility at take, that takes more than a thick skin, right? How do you create a safe environment within your organization where it is okay to fail 48% of the time?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. So that's what we try to do. Now, what's the best environment where they try to learn from mistakes? Well, that's from sports. And so we've been working with, I have for 10 years worked with a sports psychologist who teaches me how to get back on your horse. You lost money in July, you have to take the same type of risks in August. And that's what we do. And you do it by focusing in on the process rather than the end results. So that's very, very important. And we are working with the people in the oil fund now, so they should get the same kind of skill set.
So I heard that you are creating some kind of mistakes machine. Is that, how would you describe it? A mistakes machine that models everyone's mistakes and helps them see how they act under pressure.
Yeah, so the really important thing is just how you learn from your mistakes and how you put it into a system. So we are in the process of creating this investment simulator, which takes everything you do and kind of feed it back to you. Now we have hundreds of millions of data points in the cloud because every trade you ever done, we have the data. So let's say now, Rachel, you wanna buy Apple.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you try to buy Apple, and you will get it fed back to you that, Rachel, Apple is a really well-loved stock, and in the past you have not done well in these type of situations. You never made money in America. You are really stressed because you've lost money in the last 12 months, and historically, when you're stressed, you do really badly. Your ticket size is too small, etc., etc., etc. And he feeds it back to you because we don't think it's that comfortable. We don't particularly like to be shown our own mistakes, and we try to forget them. But to get them there in front of you when you try to make a trade, I think is going to be incredible.
So how do you overcome the problem? I've met a few people in finances in my life, and they can be really arrogant, to be honest. And
Absolutely.
they often say, they make decisions from their gut. They trust their gut. So in those situations where the machine is saying no, right? Do not make the investment. Here is the information why you shouldn't make that investment. But they think it is, they're working from their gut. How do you teach them to trust the machine?
Well, this we haven't even spoken about this in advance, but this is my favorite topic. And I even did my master's dissertation on this. It is, when should you trust your gut feel or pattern recognition, or when should you go with analysis? And as part of my degree, I interviewed the 20 best fund managers in Europe. And they were nice enough to talk to me. They probably wouldn't have spoken to a normal psychologist, but I kind of knew them. And a psychologist wouldn't necessarily have understood what they talked about because it was all these kind of financial jingo. So I interviewed them all, and I was looking at, what are the patterns, who are the good ones? And the good ones are the ones who go from analysis to pattern recognition from time to time. Now, if you call it gut feel, they think it's a negative thing, but you call it pattern recognition, it's great. Now, if you, let's say now you are 18 years old and you come to work for me and you say, Nicolai, we should buy this stock because I think it's great and I think it's going up. Now, I'm not going to listen to you because you have no experience and you have no credibility with me. If you later on are the CEO of a company, you can do what you want. You have a lot of experience. You have seen that it works, that it actually works, and you can act on it. So the way you use pattern recognition has to do with how complex the situation is. The more complex, the better it is. The less time you have, the better it is. The more senior you are, the better it is. And the more experience you have, the better it is. So it's a phenomenal topic.
When do you trust your gut?
I trust it in many more situations than I did before I wrote my dissertation, because I have seen that there is something there. There's this kind of blink, work, by Dan Pink, and an art historian can see a piece of art, and you don't necessarily know what it is that makes you confident that it's the real thing. But I have pretty good gut feel when it comes to people, for instance.
And when do you tell your intuition to be quiet?
I don't do that so often.
You don't do that so often. What's your intuition saying right now?
It's telling me that this is a good seminar.
Okay. All right, we'll come back to that one. Switching gears a bit. I know another passion of yours is uncertainty and sort of the power of uncertainty and what can happen if you really sit with uncertainty. During the pandemic, I mean, you've taken the role at probably one of the most challenging times in history, right? What is something you've had to rethink about your own leadership style in terms of taking the fun through the pandemic?
Well, you have to you have to crank up the volume of communication, and we did that very significantly in the oil fund. It was one of my kind of the three areas I focused in on when I joined. But the internal communication becomes extremely important because you need to lead people in a different way. You can't just tell them what to do. You have to be inspiring and lead with inspiration. So it's a different way of leading. I think the second thing was to focus in more on people. During these times, people needed more love. I think people generally need more love than you think. I mean, all the time. And more feedback.
I want to come back to the feedback. But I think one of the things I heard from leaders, and we saw this in a lot of political leaders, that it was hard to show humility because the pressure or the pull to always give people answers and to give people clarity and direction and to know what you're talking about, that to be able to say, I don't know, or we don't have the information, how have you learned how to be confident with humility? Because when you don't have the information to give people a correct answer, it's actually irresponsible to give an answer.
Yeah. Well, we have seen that the people who communicate the best are the people who show their uncertainty. And for instance, you saw it with FHI, which is kind of the leading medical information system here, the Folkehelseinstituttet. They were all the time showing their uncertainty and told people what they knew and what they didn't know. And that gave a tremendous amount of trust. And I think we've done the same. So to showing people that you don't know, it's a real strength.
What happens when people come back and they say, but I want an answer, I need you to give me some kind of certainty, and you feel that pressure, and the people on your board are saying, we can't just give them this kind of uncertainty, we have to give them some direction. How do you resist that pressure as a leader?
You just have to, right? Because if you say something which you don't know anything about, I mean, you lose any credibility for the rest of your life.
So if you were advising Boris Johnson.
Thank God I'm not.
Yeah, but it's hypothetical, right? He does tend to give an answer when he doesn't know an answer.
But it can be all sorts of answers, right? I mean,
it can be all sorts of answers.
All over the place.
He is all over the place, and he does think he thinks COVID wears a watch and understands curfews and understands deadlines and dates. If you look at his leadership, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give him?
Cut his hair.
Touché. Nothing else? It's called a dodge, that. Well, it's interesting, actually, because I wouldn't describe Boris as an introvert.
No,
in any way. He's definitely an extrovert. And I think it's interesting because I think that's actually where he gets a lot of trust from. And you spoke...
he also gets trust from being really funny, right? He's very, very charming. And you should never underestimate what a sense of humor does. There's a lot of research going into this. You need to have fun. You need to have a sense of humor. And people like you more. No,
totally. But I think one of the things that happens with, I should say, Prime Minister Johnson, is that people conflate his confidence with competence.
Yeah. I mean, you seems like you've got a bit of a problem with him. Tell me.
Well, I'm interviewing you, let's be clear, but I'll be honest, I have a problem with him because I think he is a symbol of a type of leadership that we have to move away from. That if you are really funny and you are overly confident and charismatic, even if you are not capable of doing that job, you are sometimes liked more than the capable leader.
Absolutely. But that's the situation in a tabloid world, right? In a social media world and so on, is not so much what you say, it's how you say it.
And you've spoken about how introverts are often an underutilized asset.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what do you mean by that? And how do you help introverts become the leaders that they can become?
Yeah, no, this is a really interesting thing. And, there are books about introverts, the power of quiet and so on. Introverts are promoted less often because they don't, they are not very comfortable standing, in the middle of people and talking about things. And so they are just an underutilized asset in the company. Their ideas, they don't talk so much about their ideas because they're not so comfortable with it. And so you have to lead introverts in a different way. They're less keen on talking, they're more keen on kind of written communication and emails. And I just think you need to lead people in the way that they like. So you have to adapt your leadership ways.
So interesting. When I was doing a bit of research, I was actually blown away by how, and I mean this as a compliment, how you've transformed the culture of the fund. And I think a big indicator of that, when people may challenge that, is the talent that you're attracting. I mean, there's some staggering stat in terms of ranking the most popular companies to join and the change that's happened. Could you talk about that, and what do you think that is down to?
Well, I think there are a couple of things behind this. So there was quite a bit of media noise when I joined, and that has led to a huge amount of increase in the applications we get. We get like many times the applications, which is tremendous. And it's partly because now people have heard about the fund. I'm out there talking about it. But it's also, I think, we've crystallized two things. One, we are also an IT company. Mm-hmm. One of the most important IT companies in the country, with more transactions than the Norwegian Stock Exchange. I think the second thing is that now this is a job with a meaning. Mm-hmm. And research shows that young people, between 80 and 90% of people, want to work for a company where there is a deeper sense of purpose. Now, the oil fund account now for 25% of the state budget. And if you work in finance or IT, there is no more important job to have.
It's incredible. Yeah. So I'm going to challenge you a bit. When I asked this audience, which was the most trusted brand, it wasn't really fair competition because you were competing against Uber and Facebook, but they clapped for you, which is very nice. But what should we not trust you to do?
You should not trust me to do anything which is outside my area of competence. For instance, sitting here talking to you. You should trust me, when it comes to managing capital, and that's about it.
Now, there must be other things that we should trust you to do. Buy art.
Oh, but I think you can trust me to cook you a good spaghetti.
Cook good spaghetti. Anything else we shouldn't trust you to do?
Shouldn't trust?
Yeah.
Most things. Generally speaking, if you are considered competent in one area, people tend to think that you're competent in a lot more areas, and it doesn't really make any sense.
It's actually, I think it's a really powerful principle. It's called the brightness effect.
Yeah.
So it's when you're really capable and competent in one area, it halos across.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Staying on the track of trust, I was sharing that when Buffett hires people and he's trying to make a senior hire, he looks for three things.
Yeah.
So he looks for initiative, he looks for intelligence, and he looks for integrity. And if they don't have integrity, the first two will kill you.
Yeah.
When you're hiring people, particularly in senior roles, how do you decide whether they are trustworthy?
Well, there are many, many different type of questions you can ask them, and I'm not sure you can really find out in an interview. I think you find out over time, which is why you want to talk to people who worked with them and do proper analysis that way. But clearly, brains and integrity are very, very important, and I would say humbleness would be the other one. And I think a way to figure out how humble people are is to ask them, what part of yourself are you actively trying to improve? Because that throws up some interesting things.
What's the most interesting question you've ever been asked in an interview that's got you to reveal something about yourself?
Well, that would be one, for instance.
So I know that you like to learn from lots of different disciplines, and it is fascinating the people that you have brought into your organization. So sailing teams, you've brought in skiers, police interrogators to teach people how to ask better questions. Out of all the amazing people from different fields and disciplines that you've brought into your organization, what's been your biggest insight and why?
I think probably, I think I would say two, actually. One is a police interrogator, and the second thing is a sports psychologist. Now, police interrogator, because we spend so much time talking to each other, like we do now, what you do with your husband or wife or partner or kids, or if you're a lawyer, you talk to the clients, or a doctor, to your patient. And what comes out of these interactions? I'm just sure there is so much more that can come out if you really know what to look for. I mean, I was in New York last week, and I met this woman, and I said, "So, how are you? How pleased are you with? Are you pleased with your job?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm pleased actually." Now, actually, that's called a qualifier, and it shoots down the first part of the sentence, i.e., she's not actually that happy. And it just transforms the way you understand the question and the way you interact with people and the way you read, their answers. So I think it's just super interesting to spend time on questioning and interviewing. Now, the second thing is a sports psychologist who just taught me so much in terms of how to be more resilient, how to get through stress. I mean, if it hadn't been for the skill sets I had learned from him, I would have not come through this media stress last year. It really, really helped me.
Talk more about that, because I can only imagine how, when the heat is on you in that situation and you really want the job, how did that help you navigate through that stress? Okay,
so now you're going to think I'm a complete moron, right? Because this sounds really strange. But, what you do is you manipulate yourself to think that adversity is something positive. You switch around your brain and you pretend that you really like it. So you wake up in the morning, you have like 500 journalists who just want to,
destroy me.
Absolutely. And you go into the bathroom, you look yourself in the mirror and you said, I just love it. I love when they try to get me. I perform at my peak. I'm just, wow, I love it. And, that power, that force is then you turn it into something positive. And you can do that every day. Something you don't like, you just try it tomorrow. Something you really hate. Talk to yourself in the mirror and just see whether it works or not. So that's the one thing. Then you have other things like, taking a helicopter view and thinking, in a year's time it'll be all right. And then the last thing, I had then just finished my degree in social psychology. Do you think any student of social psychology has ever been under that kind of media pressure? No way. So I thought, wow, I'm a student of social psychology. Imagine what experience this is. I'm like in the lab and I'm experiencing what this is. And so I just took so much learning away from it. You can feel the power and the force of media. Unbelievable.
So this is what sports psychologists taught you. Yeah, it's amazing. In sports, I think they say bring it on, don't they?
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Bring it on.
Bring it on. So I have a couple of last questions for you, because we're quickly running out of time.
By the way, I have to ask one thing. I mean,
yeah.
you mentioned that you didn't think transparency.
Yes.
I kind of beg to disagree there.
Yes.
Because I think transparency is good for building trust. And so in the oil fund, we are the most transparent fund in the world. We do think it builds trust with the Norwegian people. We announce, how we want to vote at AGMs 5 days ahead of time because we do think people will trust us more. So I actually think that there are different types of answers to that question.
I think there are, and there is types of transparency that gives people answers, and there's types of transparency that leads to more questions.
Yeah.
But I challenge the word, because I think what you've created is, and it's not semantics, is openness. Yeah. You are trying to explain where you're coming from and how you're making decisions, and visibility that wasn't there before. You are not promising that the fund is going to be transparent at all times.
No, perhaps not. But, one thing we did was that we now, when we have meetings in the leadership group, 3 days afterwards, you have the notes from the meetings at our intranet. Everybody in the firm can go and look at what we talked about, and they love it. And I think it's good, and I think you should all do it.
Well, I would caution them against that, but we can talk more about that. And the reason why is because you shouldn't feel the pressure to share everything. There is going to be information you cannot share, and I also think, I drew this chart where it will plateau over time.
Sure.
So potentially the reason why it's effective is because trust was low in the fund. Could be. Transparency can be a very effective tool when you're coming in as a leader and it's a low trust situation. It can create an initial bump, but then it can plateau and backfire over time. So that's what I was saying. It's not a long-term strategy that I would recommend, but we can beg to do.
I hear you.
Okay, I've got one last question because there's a big red flashing clock. I've heard as a leader that you feel one of the most important skills and something that we don't learn is how you learn to give feedback. And I know Aaron was on the stage earlier talking about it as well. So I have a last question for you. I'd like you to give me a piece of feedback on how I can moderate a better discussion.
I would say the feedback is that you did it really well.
You can't say that. That's not helpful. One piece of constructive feedback.
Ooh. Well, that's a tough one. I just can't quite see how it was done. Could be done better. But I'll think about it and send you an email. What about that?
So.
And guys, do you know why? Because positive feedback you give in front of people, constructive feedback you give on a one-to-one basis.
There you go. I'd like to thank you, Nicolai, for just being so honest and I think humble up here as well. I think it is incredible the media intensity that you went through, and I think this advice to love adversity and to bring it on it could be life-changing for many people. So I want to thank Nicolai for his openness today and also for his leadership of the fund, and I only wish you the best in an incredibly important role. So can we give Nicolai a big round of applause?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thanks, Rachel. Okay, we're wrapping up. Stay with me. Stay with me. The kids will be fine. They'll survive an extra. I can see you. A couple of corrections before we say a big goodbye. The SMS. The Oslo people will be getting the SMS with the link to the survey. Those of you watching remotely, you'll get a link in the chat or via your streams, whatever streams you're watching it on. That's the first thing. The other thing is the fireside chat won't be in here. They'll be in the VIP room or the normal fireside chat place. VIP room or fireside chat. And the VIP room now is open to everybody, obviously. Just walk in, okay? Have you had a good day? It's been an amazing day, hasn't it? Listen, guys, wait. Get your calendars out. 21st, 22nd of September, all right? Time's running out for those early bird tickets. Make sure you're there next year. Remember, they haven't finished announcing all the guests, all the speakers for next year. There may be some new surprises coming up. Who knows? Get your tickets now. What else? What else? What else? Here we are. Yes. All that remains for me to say is there's lovely afterwork with Bubbles there. And all I'm going to say now is that Oslo Business Forum 2021 is a wrap. See you next year. Whoa! All right.